Hello everybody, this is Miss Youngblood here with your recording of session 2 for geometry. Today's session, the topic is circle basics, so that's what we're going to go through today. If you haven't already done so, on Google Classroom I posted a weekly check-in. I do need you to complete that by Friday so that I can kind of give you an idea of who I still need to reach out to see how you guys are doing. So again, you click the check-in, click the Google form, and just fill all this out for me. Name, contact information, and you'll see all the information once you fill that out for yourself. So make sure you're doing that for your check-in for the week. All right, so let's get into today's topic, which, like I said, is circle basics. So I do kind of have a video that we're going to review together. I'm not going to use the sound from the video just because I found that was very distracting in some of my earlier videos. So I'm just going to go through part by part together, and I'll kind of add some notes to the side that I'll also post to Google Classroom. So I do want to show you where you'll find the notes. So we'll see session 2. I'm still working on that because we're doing that now. But session 1, I've already posted the notes and the YouTube video that goes with those notes. So you can always go back and look at that if you don't make it to the session because you're working or you have other family obligations. If you have a legitimate excuse for missing class, I just want to make sure you have the resources that you need. If you don't have a legitimate excuse, you might want to hop on so that you can get some extra help and support because this stuff is not too easy. It's not too challenging, but you might need some support. So without further ado, let's get into this video. Oh, I hope y'all don't hear that. Okay. So in this intro, Sal is just talking about a circle. So what we want to start by doing is defining what is a circle. So we're going to switch to our sketch screen. So the most important, or one of the most important parts of a circle is the center. So the center is an important part because the circle itself is comprised of all the points that are the same distance from this center. So for example, let's say this distance we don't know, we could call it 5, 4, whatever. There's no dimensions in this plane we're drawing in. So that's one point, that's a distance from that point. So again, we could say that that's a distance of 1 for the sake of simplicity. If we go 1 in the opposite direction, so about here, that would be another point that's a distance of 1. All right, we could estimate some more points, maybe here, maybe here, maybe here. So the point is all these points, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points, all have a distance that is the same from that center. Now, obviously, mine isn't going to be perfect, but if you were to construct all the points that have that distance from the center, you would construct a perfect circle. Again, Miss Youngblood's is not perfect because she's just drawing in Microsoft Word. So all these points on this outer part of the circle, this part of the circle, have the same distance from that center. Then Sal goes on to talk about how this distance that is the same has a special name. And this we've already gone over. I'm going to try to switch my color. We've already gone over that this distance that is the same to any point on the circle from the center is called the radius. So this distance is the radius. And we have already covered that. So that should be a little bit of review for you guys. Pick a different color. Purple. So, another key characteristic of circles is the longest distance across the circle. So we see we could draw multiple lines, and I'm going to erase these. If we draw this line here, that's an interesting line. If we draw this line here, oops. This line here, that's an interesting line. But the longest line that goes through a circle has to go through the center, right? This line is going to be longer than any of these other lines that I've drawn. So we could have drawn it this way from both ends of the circle, cutting through the center. Let me erase these lines that we don't want. Or we could have drawn it any way, really. So we could have also drawn it something like this, right? So these lines are going to have the same distance because they're both going from end to end of the circle, and they're cutting through the center. So this line is called the diameter. So the longest line that goes through the circle is called the diameter. I'm trying to figure out where I want to mark that. Diameter. That line is the diameter. And most of you know that the diameter actually has a specific relationship to the radius. So we're going from one end, from one end of the circle through the center to the other end of the circle. So we already know this distance from the circle to the center is the radius, right? So again, this distance from the circle to the center is the radius, right? So both of these are both the radius. So that tells us that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. The diameter is 2 times the radius. Then another relationship that comes up talks about the distance around the circle, the relationship between the distance around the circle and the diameter. So before I get ahead of myself, we're going to jump back to the video to make sure that I didn't miss any topic that Saul covered in the video. So let's switch back to the browser and just speed through what he's done as well. So here, again, he's talking about the radius, which we just talked about. And again, he's making the connection that this distance here, the diameter, is equal to 2 radii. So the diameter goes all the way through the circle, through the center. Diameter is 2 times the radius. Nice. So now he's jumping into something new, another important part of the circle. So now, the next thing we're going to talk about, which again we discussed in class, is the circumference. So the circumference of the circle is kind of the same thing as like the perimeter of the circle, the outside part of the circle. I'm trying to find a new color. So this distance, the whole distance around the circle, this distance around the circle is called the circumference. Oops, blood, that spells. Circumference. Ooh. We're actually going to move this formula down here. So we said diameter equals to r. And now we're looking at what the circumference is. So this distance around the circle is called the circumference. And long ago, there were some great mathematicians who were trying to find the relationship between the circumference. So what they would do is they would measure, this distance around the circle, measure the diameter with a tape measure, and compare the two. And what they noticed is the ratio of the circumference to the diameter was always the same. So for example, I am going to erase this later. I'll just kind of make it as a note over here. For example, they might find that for circle A, the circumference was 6 and the diameter was 2. For another circle, a different circle they measured B, they might find that the circumference was 9 and the diameter was 3. So they were finding relationships like that. And as you know, to find the ratio or the relationship between these two numbers, we could divide them. So the ratio from 6 to 2 is 3, right? The circumference is about 3 times the size of the diameter. Same thing here, the relationship or the ratio would be 2. The circumference is 3 times the size of the diameter. So basically all Saul says is that they just got really fancy with their stuff. And they found out that it wasn't exactly 3. It was a number that was really close to 3. And that number that's really close to 3 is called pi. So pi This magic number pi is the ratio. It should always equal the circumference divided by the diameter. But we usually don't see it written like this, right? We've already talked about circumference before the school year closed, before the school year closed. So normally we're trying to solve for the circumference. So if we wanted to get c by itself, we could multiply both sides by d. So the formula that we use a lot is that the circumference is equal to pi times the diameter. And there's also another relationship we can see between these two formulas, right? So the circumference is pi times the diameter. We also know that the diameter is 2 times the radius. So another formula we could use to find the circumference would be pi times 2r. But normally you would see this written as 2 pi r. These two expressions are the exact same thing. Normally though, the variable is written last, right? 2 is a number that we know. Pi is a magical number we just learned about, but it is a value in the calculator. So yeah, that's the formula for the circumference. I also just wanted to add that this ratio, this magical number pi, if you type it into the calculator, you'll get this value, 3.14. You'll get a whole bunch of numbers after it. This is just the approximation, the approximate value. So that's where that 3 was coming from that I was getting. But let's switch back and see where we are in the video to make sure we haven't missed out on anything. So again, talked about circumference. It's a ratio. He was just giving the same examples I was giving. We talked about how their measurements got more precise, so the number got a little bit more complicated. It was a little bit bigger than 3. Yep, the same thing. And the last thing he ended with, like we did, is another way you can find the circumference is to multiply the radius by 2 and then multiply by pi, because that will get you the diameter times pi. So I think he's gonna give us an example to do. Yep, so let's sketch this example. So if we have this circle with a radius of 3, let's go back to our sketch, our notes. We have a circle, and the problem tells us that the radius is 3. What would the diameter be? So pause the video for a moment and try to figure out what the diameter would be. So the diameter, remember, all you do to find the diameter is multiply the radius by 2. So our radius is 3, therefore the diameter is 6. So that means the diameter, oh, I think he gave us units. Let's go back and see what units he gave us, because we do need to start being more precise with our units. Go back to the video and let him finish. The units are meters. Okay, so like I said, you want to be precise with your units. So the radius is 3 meters. So that means the diameter is 6 meters. So this diameter D, right? So that would be this whole distance here from end to end of the circle through the center is going to be 6 meters. So if they give you from end to end, that's the diameter. If they give you from center to end, that is the radius. So this is 6 meters. Then they're going to ask us to find the circumference. So remember, to find the circumference, you would just use the formula we used above here, right? So the circumference is pi times the diameter, which we already found. If we didn't know the diameter, we could use this formula, 2 pi times r, which is what they gave us. But yes, let's use this one since we've already found the diameter. So again, the formula is just pi times our diameter, which is 6. So your final answer would just be 6 pi. So I do want to emphasize that there are multiple ways to write this answer. right? So this is the most exact way to write it, right? Because we know pi is a very complicated number. It's a very long decimal that doesn't end. So this is the most accurate or exact way to write it, 6 pi. Another way you could write it is to get an approximation. So as I said before, pi is approximately equal to 3.14. Again, we know that there are more numbers that come after it, but this is the approximation most people go by. So if you wanted to get another value, you could say that the circumference of this circle is approximately 6 times 3.14. If you pull up your calculator and type into your calculator 6 times 3.14, you're going to get 18.84. .84. And I did forget to do my units, so you want to be precise with your units. These are meters squared, or square meters. So this, or just meters, I'm sorry. I'm not talking about area. I'm getting confused with algebra. Meters, right? This is a distance. So this distance is meters. You could also say, if you wanted to put an actual, to get a better idea of the numerical value, it's 18.84 meters approximately. To get an even more precise approximation, you could actually use the pi value in your calculator. Your calculator isn't perfect, but it's definitely going to give you a better approximation than this, because it's going to carry this decimal out further than just the 1/4. So if we do 6 times, and then we actually find the pi button in our calculator. Oh, it actually didn't make it that much more precise. What did I do? 6 times pi. Yep. So actually all it gave me, it did give me a few more decimal places, so I'll just include those so you guys can see. So it's 8.8496. So I provided 2 more decimal places. This just stopped right here in the calculator. This again extends the decimals out because pi, we know, extends out. So all these answers are right. It just depends on what the question is asking you to find. But I do want to show you that you can represent the circumference in different ways. So that's the first example. If we switch back to our browser, see where he's leaving off. So he's just doing the same thing we did. Right, we already got the circumference was that. We found the diameter. And then he gives us another example. So now he kind of wants us to work backwards, right? And they actually do give you some problems like that in Khan Academy. So let's do that example real quick so we can make sure we understand it. So let's say it's gonna fit. Let's actually extend this. Please extend. Listen, please. We have enough space to fit it. I don't know why I was tripping. So, we have this circle, and they tell us that the circumference, the distance around the circumference, is 10 meters. Let me just verify. That's what he said in his example. 10 meters, yep. So now we're going to use the same formula. We're still using this formula. Circumference equals pi times diameter. But we're going to plug in this value 10 for a different variable. So they tell us that this 10 is the circumference. So instead of plugging it in for d, diameter, we're going to plug it in for c, the circumference. So our formula should be 10 equals pi times diameter. So again, we just use the same formula, but we change the c to a 10 because we're told that the circumference is 10. So to figure out what the diameter is, all you would do is work to get d by itself. To get d by itself, we're going to divide by this number pi. So divide both sides by pi. So these cancel, so we're left with 10 over pi equals the diameter. Right, so that's our final exact answer. So I do want to show you the other two answers the same way we did here, and then I'm actually going to show you how to find the radius as well. So your first approximation you can find by plugging in 3.14 for pi. So if you did that in the calculator, you could also say that d equals, remember, so we just found the diameter. This d, this number, is this distance here. So that's what we just found, the diameter. So we said d equals, we're going to do 10, or let's be a little bit more precise. D is approximately, right? Because we know D equals 10 divided by 5. That's the answer. But we know it's approximately 10 divided by 3.14. Right? So if you type that in the calculator, 10 divided by 3.14, we're going to get 3.18. And I forgot my units again. So our units are still going to be in meters for both of these. So 3.18 meters. So if this circumference, this distance is 10 meters, that means this distance has to be approximately 3.18 meters, right? This means a little bit more to us than 10 over pi, 10 divided by pi. That's why it sometimes is helpful to write the decimal, so you can better visualize the relationship between the numbers. Another approximation we can have is to use pi in the calculator. So if we do 10 divided by pi and actually type that in, 10 divided by pi, we can extend that decimal a little bit. So we could also say this equals 3.1831 meters. So again, all three of these answers are correct. It just depends on how they ask you to find the answer in your specific problem. We also want to take the time to find the radius. So we could find it using this. I am going to show it just so that you've seen it, but I probably won't ever ask you to approximate it like this. I think it'll be more meaningful with the decimal. So remember, the radius, the diameter is 2 times the radius, right? So as we said, diameter is 2 times the radius. So that also is going to mean that the radius, let's put it down here. The radius is the diameter cut in half, right? So if we want to find the radius, we need to cut the diameter in half. So this distance here would be the radius. So if we know this whole distance is 3.18, and we just want this distance, we're going to cut it in half. So let's look at the decimals first. That might be a little bit easier to understand. So the radius would be 3.18. We're going to use the smaller approximation. Doesn't matter really. Divided by 2. So if we do that 3.18, 3.18 divided by 2, you get 1.59. So this distance, this radius is 1.59. If you wanted to make it exact, we would divide this value by 2. So if we were doing 10 over pi divided by 2, that's the same thing as 10 over pi times 1/2. So again, we said this was the approximate value. To find the value it equals, we could do 10 over pi divided by 1/2, or divided by 2, or times 1/2. So if we did it like that, this would be the same thing as, well, 10 divided by 2 is 5, so these would cancel. I'd have a 1 down here, a 5 up here. So this is the same thing as 5 over pi. 5 over pi. It's actually kind of messy. Let's make sure it's separated. Okay. So the radius, the exact answer for the radius is going to be this value, 5 over pi, 5 divided by pi. So if you type meters, so if you type this value into your calculator, 5 divided by pi, you would get approximately 1.59. I believe when I was talking, if I didn't have this screen up, these are the notes I was referring to, where I divided by 2 and found the radius. But let's switch back to the browser just to make sure we covered everything he covered. It's about the radius, taking half of it over pi, which is exactly what we got. Cool. So now we want to go to our assignment. Oops. So in Khan Academy, you want to make sure that you're in the right class. So we're going to go to geometry, right? In geometry class, and look at the assignments that I gave that we're due on Thursday. So based on the notes we just did, we should be able to do these 2 assignments, radius and diameter, and the circumference of a circle. So the first one that I think is a little easier to follow is circumference of a circle. Oh, did I click? No, radius and diameter. Okay. Okay. So in this first problem, they do start off a little easy for us, thankfully. They say the radius of a circle is 5 units. What is the diameter of a circle? So to find the diameter, all you would do is multiply this radius by 2. So the answer should be 10 units. Again, all we did was 5 times 2 to get 10. In the next section, they give me the diameter and ask for the radius. So then we're working in the reverse. So they give us the diameter, which is 2. To find the radius, you take half of it, so it would just be 1. And in this one, they give us a lovely picture. So the purpose of giving us the picture is that they want you to be able to identify the vocab, right? So in this picture, if they're going all the way across, I'm going to switch back to my sketch screen. In this picture, if they're going all the way across the circle, okay, so this is the problem we had in Khan Academy. If they give us this picture, they're giving us this whole distance across. So this whole distance across, we know, is the diameter. This whole thing is the diameter. So for Khan Academy, we should type in 13 for the diameter. For the radius, we're going to do 13 divided by 2, which gets us 6.5. So the radius should be 6.5 centimeters. So let's switch back to that screen so we can do that. So we said the radius was 6.5 and the diameter was 13. So on this one, same thing. Now they're giving us the radius, right? So the radius is the distance from the center to one end. The diameter is the distance from end to end through the center. So the radius they give us, 5.1, and we're going to multiply it by 2 to find the diameter, 10.2. I probably am going to include this one in the notes. No, I'm not. So again, they tell us the radius, and we want to find the diameter. So we just multiply 8 by 2 to get 16. And in this one, they tell us the diameter and ask for the radius. So all you're going to do is divide the diameter by 2 to get 3. And they give us another picture. So in this picture, they're giving us the diameter. So the diameter is 7. To find the radius, which is half of this, divided by 2, so we get 3.5. And that's the first problem set. Not too bad. So now we're gonna go back to our tasks. So we just did radius and diameter. Now we want to look at circumference of a circle. That was the second assignment. It's only 4 problems. So these are a little bit more complicated. They're giving you the circumference and asking you to find the diameter. So we actually did do an example like this in the notes. So let's switch back to our notes real quick. We looked at the notes. Oh, yep, second example. Here, we were given the circumference, which was 10. So to find the diameter, we had to divide both sides by pi. Remember the formula, the circumference is pi times diameter. So if we want to find the diameter, we're going to divide by pi. All right, so we're going to plug in our value for this 10 instead. If we switch back to our problem, we are going to divide this value, 907.46, by pi to find the diameter. So in your calculator, actually just do it on the screen here, 907.46 divided by pi. And they give us this value. They do want you to round it to the nearest hundredths. I did kind of play with it, that's why I got one wrong. So if we round this, it's going to be 288.85 is going to be the diameter. 288.85. Oops, let me make sure I did that right. 288.85. Put a comma? I did. So in this one, they give you the diameter. So to find the circumference, all you have to do is multiply by pi. Notice they don't give you the option to type pi, so they actually do want you to get the value from the calculator. So in your calculator, you can use theirs, you're going to do 6 times pi, which gets us 18.85. Remember, we're rounding this to the nearest hundredths, so the number right after 4 is a 9, which means we round this up to 5, 18.85. And the next question, they give us the radius and ask us to find the circumference. So if you're given the radius, you would have to multiply this by 2 to find the diameter. So the diameter for this one would be 6, and then multiply that by pi. So in our calculator, it's actually going to be the same answer we got last time. If you remember what it is, you could just type it. So 6 times pi, again, gets us 18.85 units. 18.85. So that is their circumference for that. Last one, they give us the circumference and ask us to find the radius. So we'll have to find the diameter and then divide by 2 to find the radius. Okay, so here we have a circle with the circumference. So they give us the circumference. So again, we're using this formula. C equals pi times d, where we're looking for the diameter first. What is this little thing? Go away. We're given the circumference, right? So this is the circumference, so this needs to be plugged in here. So we have 452.16 equals pi times d. We're trying to find the diameter, so we want to divide both sides by pi to get the diameter by itself. So in our calculator, if we do 452.16 and divide by pi, the diameter should be 143.93, and I will go through this on the calculator with you to show you how I did it. So that's the diameter. Then to find the radius, we're going to divide this number by 2. So we can rewrite this as 143.93 equals 2r. So if we divide both sides by 2, I'm actually going to keep this whole number that's in the calculator and divide it by 2. I'm not going to retype it. It'll make your answer more exact. So we get 71.96 is the radius. So let's look at what that actually would look like on Khan Academy. Back to our browser. Again, what was our value again? 452.16. So we're doing 452.16 divided by pi. right? So that was our diameter. And then we're going to divide that whole number, just put divided by 2. So they'll write all these decimals for you. I didn't type anything else. And that was the value we got for our radius, 71.96. So, oops. Oh. Oh, we're good. 71.96. Yep, and that's the last one. So, we also, the next thing I want to review is actually really short. It's area, and you guys do know how to do area. I know you do. So we're going to look at this video real quick to see what Sal goes over. Don't want to hear him. Bad feedback. Area of a circle. Let's get it. Let's go. Oh, I would like to see the video, please. Here it is. There's only like 4 problems, I believe. The video, he just does one example. Are we ready? Oh, is it? Okay. So they actually give us a word problem. If you want to read it, you can. It says a candy machine creates small chocolate wafers in the shape of circular disc. The diameter is 16 millimeters. What is the area of each candy? So let's go ahead and solve that in the notes. In the notes, again, we have these chocolate wafers. Diameter goes through the center from end to end, and we're told it is 16 millimeters. Units are important. Do not. They ask us to find the area, and basically, Saul just kind of tells you the area formula. So, same way that they discovered the area, the formula for circumference, they did a lot of relationships to try to figure out the area for a circle, and the formula they came up with was A equals pi r squared. Right? So in this particular problem, we're not given the radius, we have to find it. So we're actually given the diameter. So we need to go back and use this relationship, the fact that the radius is the diameter divided by 2, which is the same thing as the diameter being twice the radius. So if we're given the diameter, we could set up our problem as 16 equals 2r and divide both sides by 2 to get that the radius is 8. So our radius is 8, right? If this whole thing is 16, then that means this distance from here to here has to be 8 because it's half of it. And if you want to find the area, we just plug it into the formula. So the area is going to be pi times our radius, which is 8 squared. So area equals pi times 8 squared. So that is just going to be 64 pi. So the exact answer is 64 pi. If you wanted to approximate it, you could do 64 times 3.14. We'll get that number. And remember, you could also do 64 times pi in the calculator. So if you do the first one, 64 times 3.14, that gets us 198.4. What are our units? Square millimeters. So it's going to be, squeeze it right here, square millimeters, because we're squaring this 8, we're also squaring the units. So this is 198.4 square millimeters is one answer. Our other answer, if you do 64 times the real pi, the more 64 times, okay, the more precise value for pi. There's actually a bit of a difference because our number's a little bit bigger. So you're going to get 201.06 millimeters squared. So we do see that there's a bit of a difference. Here's a more precise answer, here's the approximate answer, and here's the exact answer. All of these answers are correct though. Well, I do want to update this. I don't know how I got this value when I typed it in my calculator, but this was not, I redid it and it was not 198. So I was like, that's kind of a big difference. This should have actually been 200.96. So it's still different. 200.96 square millimeters. So it's still different, right? It's not exactly the same, but it's not as different. So that's the area. And now we're going to look at some of the problem sets. So if we switch back to our assignments, switch back to your assignments, we now have to do this last problem, area of a circle, I believe. Oh, it is 7. Okay, it's a little lengthy, but we'll be okay. So we're finding the area of a circle. So in this one, they tell us the circumference and we need to find the area. So this one's actually a little bit involved. So let's actually put this problem in our note. Okay, so now we're going to look at this problem. We're asked to find the area when we are given the circumference. So remember, we have these two formulas we're focusing on. I'll rewrite them down here. So the circumference is 2 pi r, or pi times the diameter. And the area, 3 formulas I'm going to write. Pi r squared, and the diameter is 2 times the radius. Okay, so we're given the circumference. So we're going to start with this first formula that uses the circumference, right? And we know we want the radius. Actually, let's just do the easy one. So we have the circumference is 18.84, and we know that that is equal to pi times the diameter. Again, you could have also used this one, but just for the sake of clarity, I am going to go through the more lengthier way. To get the diameter, we're going to divide 18.84 by pi. So if I divide 18.84 divided by pi in our calculator, that gets us about 6. Right, so when you round it, it is close to 6. It's 5.9969. So they made that kind of nice for us. So diameter is 6 units. And if you want the radius, right, we need the radius for the area. So the radius, or the diameter, we know is 6 equals 2r. We divide both sides by 2. We get that the radius is 3 units. So now that we have the radius, we can find the area. So since the radius is 3 units, to find the area, we're going to do pi times the radius, which is 3 squared. So that means the area is going to be 9 pi. We'll see how the calculator lets us type it, or Khan Academy lets us type it. Just in case we have to get the approximation. In my calculator, I'm going to do 9 times pi, which gets us 28.27. And do not forget your units like Miss Youngblood did. Oh, they actually gave it for us. So the units are going to be units squared, or square units. Square units. So that's our final answer. So if we switch back to our screen, our browser, 28.27. Am I back? I am back. 28.27. 28.27 should be the answer. Next one. They just asked for the area. So in this one, so notice they give us these specific directions. They say either enter an exact answer in terms of pi, so we can put our answer in terms of pi, or we can multiply by 3.14 to get the decimal. So this one's a little more straightforward. The diameter is 14, so that means that the radius is going to be 7, right? Radius is 7. And then if we're using the formula, we just square that. So 7 squared is 49. So this answer should be 49 pi. A little more straightforward. Next question is a little easier. They just give us the radius straight away. So the answer is actually the same, right? This radius is 7. If you square 7, 7 times 7 is 49. And we just have to make sure that that's being multiplied by pi. So again, because they allow us to, we can just type 49 pi and we don't have to use the calculator to get the approximate answer. This one, the area, find the area of a circle with a circumference of 12.56. I did do an example similar to this already. It's in the notes. I am going to walk you through how to do it in a calculator. So if we're given the circumference, divide by pi to find the diameter. So we have 12.56 divided by pi. This is the diameter, 3.9979, which rounds to about 4. So we can round our diameter to 4. The diameter is 4. Divide that by 2. So 4 divided by 2 to get our radius. So our radius is 2. And then to find the area, we're going to square it. So 2 squared. I guess they don't have exponents unless I'm missing it. Oh, it's this one. 2 squared. Yes. Just so we can know how to type it. Maybe. Nah, that didn't work. How would you type that? 2 squared. There we go. Yeah. So 2 squared is 4. So the and then times pi. So 4 pi. And I think for this one, they don't let you type the pi symbol in. So you do want to do 4 times pi. So the area should be 12.57, I should say. So because this number is a 6, we're going to round back to a 7. 12.57. Good. 3 more. Find the area of a circle with a diameter of 16. So again, we did do one like this when I gave you a picture. The diameter is 16. So to find the radius, we're going to divide 16 divided by 2. The radius is 8. So to find the area, we need to square that. So 8 squared is 64. And then they say we can enter the exact answer. So that means we can just type 64 pi. If they didn't have that option, then you could do 64 times 3. Oh, no. Then you could do times 3.14, but it's best to be as approximate as possible when you're able. So you could also type in this number, 201.06, and that would work as well. Less work. This one, nice. We're finding the area given the radius. The radius is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. So the answer for this one is just going to be pi, actually. And last one, find the area of a circle with a circumference of 37.68. So again, this is the more challenging one. I do have one example in the notes, so I'm not going to post another one. But just to walk through it, you would do 37.68 divided by pi. So that gets us our diameter. Our diameter is 11.968. It's about 12. So if you divide that by 2, you get about 6, right? 5.98 is similar to 6. So we'll just use 6. You could square this how it is, but we'll just use 6 to keep things kind of simple. So 6 squared, it's going to be that number, and then we're going to multiply that by pi. So this is technically going to get us 36 times pi. All right, this is the same thing, just so you guys can see, as 36 times pi. So we're going to type this number in, 113.10. So because this is a 7, we're going to round this up to 10. So this is 113.1 or 113.10. Let's see if they take both. 113.10. They do. And yeah, so that concludes our review. So I went through all the problem sets. So you just have 3 problem sets to do. I'm sorry for how lengthy our video was. I think I just talked too much about where circles came from, but you can obviously skip that if I'm going into too much detail. So I'll place the notes and video here on Google Classroom, but if you're following me on YouTube, you'll just see the video when it comes up. Please keep in mind that on Fridays, there is no class, but I do have some additional practice problems for those who are striving for that A or B letter grade on their transcript. And the next time I will see you guys should be next week, right? You guys are 4B geometry. Yeah, so I don't see you guys until next week during 3A. So I will see you Monday from 12 to 1:30 on the Google link that is in Google Classroom. So please make sure you guys are signing in if you need help. I'll be hanging around here until 3 o'clock. Thanks again for watching. If you are, bye.